I'm Danny Otto. Welcome into an all-new episode of That Recap Show. Now, before we get into the episode, just want to issue major spoiler alert. We are going to be going over everything that happened in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. So if you haven't seen that movie yet, you may want to pause this video. Head to your local movie theaters, check out that movie. It's incredible. And then come back and enjoy the breakdown. Now, with that out of the way, let's start the show.
Poppin' Off presents That Recap Show.
All right, joining with me to break down everything from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, it's Jon Jon Rico.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, wait, should I say hello, morons?
Man, whew, I am emotionally wrecked from that movie, both in a positive and a negative. Or I guess they're all positive, but I just mean like the lowest lows and the highest highs from that movie. I experienced everything.
Oh yeah. Roller coaster of emotions.
Exactly. I one would go to say I am in a glass case of emotions.
I'm in a glass case of emotion.
But anyway, there's so much we can go over. There's so many Easter eggs. There's so many funny parts. There's so many good action parts. But I mean, just kicking everything off, I think we're both in agreement that this was just a really incredible way to kind of say goodbye to these characters. And, you know, not only these characters, but to James Gunn, because now that he's going to be, you know, pretty much one of the major higher ups at DC, he's probably not going to do anything for the MCU. We may see him work with these actors over at DC or some independent films or something like that. But this is kind of his MCU goodbye, but also goodbye to directing these characters moving forward, whether we see these characters in like, you know, Avengers movies or anything like that. It's really not going to be James Gunn kind of behind the scenes with them anymore. But I think this was, you know, as broad as I can go for the beginning, I think this was just a great send off for both all of these characters and for James Gunn's take on all of these characters. And you know, I am one thing that I think every one of these Guardians films has done that I really do appreciate. And look, I am all for like having things set up for you know, bigger things in the MCU, whether it be, you know, bigger Avengers team ups or bigger villain threats and stuff like that, like what we got, you know, with all of the early phases when we were setting up Thanos and stuff like that. And now that we're, you know, starting to get into this, we're starting to set up Kang and stuff like that. But one thing that I think all of these Guardians films have done very well is staying very focused on this team and the threat that happens to be happening to this team personally, type of thing. That's not to say that they haven't interacted. Obviously, during, you know, Infinity War, Endgame, Thor: Love and Thunder, we saw a lot of the Avengers interacting with we saw a lot of the Guardians interacting with other Avengers like Thor and, you know, Iron Man, Doctor Strange, all these other characters and stuff like that. But I do really appreciate when we can have, you know, a solid trilogy that really focuses. We get to see a lot of development from these characters with these characters. And so having this final film of this trilogy, we really get to experience how these characters have grown, not only personally, but with the rest of the members on the team, which is really cool because we get a lot of glimpses into stuff like that. And I think it's really cool. And like I said, I could go on for forever. I think we probably will, just because this was, you know, we both really enjoyed this film. And I if you haven't seen it yet, why are you watching this? Number one. But number two, go check it out. It's not something that I think you really have to worry about, you know, getting spoiled, I guess. But I would say if you're on the fence to go see it, definitely go see it. Rico, what were some of your initial impressions of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3?
Yeah, this was a pretty great wrap up for this trilogy, especially. I don't think you could really ask for a better wrap up for this iteration of the Guardians team. Saying goodbye to like this version of the team, but also paving the way for the team to go on moving forward. I think James Gunn knows these characters left and right, so I think he knew what he wanted to do from the beginning, and to kind of see him be able to do that throughout this journey was pretty awesome to see. Um, yeah, like everybody has like a satisfying arc, right? From Star Lord to Drax, to Mantis, to even to Kraglin and Cosmo, even had their great little kind of a story arc throughout this. And I feel like he did a great job of balancing all of that and giving everyone their due. And by the end of it, you feel like, okay, yeah, I can see this all this being legitimately good endings for the characters going forward. While also, of course, again, leaving that door open for possible returns and reunions and such. So yeah, I'm really excited for that aspect of it personally. Hits on all the notes, comedy, drama, action. Probably some of the best action in the MCU in a long time, probably since Shang-Chi, in my opinion. And yeah, I mean the music. I'll talk about that later on, but James Gunn once again kills it. But yeah, again, I don't think you really can ask for too much of this. There's probably a few things that you probably could ask more of certain characters. Probably Gamora and Warlock are the kind of the couple I think of personally. But overall, like nothing where I'm like that ruined the movie for me.
Right. I definitely understand that. Like, is it a perfect movie? No. And it's getting all of these really good, ratings and everything like that. And people are comparing it to, Infinity War and Endgame and all of this stuff. It's perfect for an ending, I think. Is it a perfect film? I don't know. I don't think so. But I think it's a very, very good film. I mean, all of the Guardians films will be, are very high on my list of MCU films in general. But just like you said, I think there are, there's little things here and there, but it's very easy to overlook them and to not really pay attention to things that that leave you wanting in comparison to the things that you get from this film. And I think that goes to say like just how well this film was kind of presented, type of thing.
Yeah, and also kind of it felt like a return to form to the MCU. Obviously, when you have James Gunn, like he again he knows these characters like the back of his own hand, so he kind of knows how to handle them. But I guess this is definitely a movie that the MCU needed at a certain point because I'd say other than probably Wakanda Forever, the last few outings haven't been like the most universally loved. And I feel like this is that one that's gonna get people back into that motion again. Like, okay, the next one's coming. Let's see how good that is. And so yeah, like when you have a movie like this that kind of feels like that return to form feel, there's a lot to get excited about in the future too.
Absolutely. And like I said, we could go on and on and on, but do you want to get to some big takeaways?
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. All right. Why don't you kick us off with big takeaways?
Okay, first things first. I kind of teased it already. The soundtrack, like holy crap. Always been one of my favorite things about the trilogy is the way he uses the music as basically another character in the movie. If I remember right, he always kind of says that he kind of writes the scenes around the songs, basically like he has the songs picked out for the scenes already. So I always find it cool when I hear certain things like like the first song that we really get to see Adult Quill with is Come and Get Your Love in the first one, and the way that's kind of brought back in full circle again later on and that final post credit scene was pretty cool too. But there's a couple of songs in particular in this movie that I felt were hit really hard. Three actually. The first one is the creep acoustic version to begin the movie with focusing on Rocket and his story. Kind of right away, you're already getting the tone thrown at you right away. It's going to be a deep, heavy movie focused on one of the most like emotionally complex characters that they have in the Guardians, and that story delivers through and through for sure. The second one is of course, No Sleep Till Brooklyn by the Beastie Boys. And again, we were talking about the action sequences. That was probably, in my opinion, the best action sequence in the MCU in a long time.
Yeah.
My favorite probably since the bus scene in Shang-Chi. That's another one that stands out for me.
Yeah.
And but yeah, again, the way you were kind of able to do this like one take shot, displaying all the Guardians at like the height of basically their power. They're all together again. Rocket has just been revived, and they're right there ready to kick ass. And boom, Beastie Boys comes on, No Sleep Till Brooklyn. And just like, dang, I never expected this to hit as hard as it did.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was like, just like, I was loving that. I was loving that throughout the whole movie. But then, okay, the last one is the final scene in the movie, the Florence and the Machine song, "Dog Days Are Over." That probably, when we talk about happy crying, that's a happy cry scene. You got to see everyone, they're going on their separate ways, but there's a happiness to it. Like
Right.
everyone's content with where they are, and you get the feeling that like it's goodbye for now for some of them, but and for some it's like, okay, yeah, we're moving on to the next stage of our careers. But yeah, like the way that you finally get to see these kind of full character arc moments, like Nebula smiling and dancing along, and then Drax also finally dancing along with the kids. Groot and Rocket dancing together on Nowhere. Like all these little moments were really well represented in that song. And I see a lot of TikTok edits with that song right now that really help
Yeah.
kind of blend some footage of all three movies, and it really shows how well represented the music is in the movie, and Gunn's ability to do that throughout all of his projects, like Suicide Squad and Peacemaker and other examples that he does a great job with that with. But yeah, so the soundtrack of that was really cool. And then I got to give a shout out to Chukwudi Inuji, who played the High Evolutionary, another person who we know from Peacemaker, of course. We saw a few different Peacemaker cameos and Suicide Squad cameos, but man, he really like brought the house down with his performance as the High Evolutionary. Of course, taking this character and kind of making him so personal to Rocket's story, I think was the biggest move that kind of helped propel this character into like that upper echelon of Marvel villains. I always feel like the best villains in the MCU always have a personal tie to some character, but not just some villain out there to be bad. And Thanos, and his ties to Gamora, and then of course you got Peter Parker and Goblin, though that personal tie they have. Shang-Chi and his father, like all of that stuff is what I feel like makes for like the best villains. Black Panther and Killmonger, another one. Like again, when you have a personal tie to a character that gives you that emotional connection between the two,
Yeah.
it makes for the more gripping scenes. Like, and then of course you have the stuff with the Teefs and Floor and Lila, the whole like you give him that another emotional thread that makes you want to hate him even more. That's so he really did well in that regard, and I was really surprised to see this character kind of like be as hateable as he could be, and especially when we were coming off of Kang, who is supposed to be a bigger in scale villain, but it didn't really hit in the way that people were probably imagining. I think it's because he lacks that personal connection to the character that he was fighting against, as opposed to High Evolutionary, he's going right after a boy Rocket. So, and we got that great moment where Rocket finally gets his Rocket Raccoon moment, acknowledging his full name from the comics, of course. So he gave us that really great moment where we get to see him get his ass kicked by Rocket Raccoon. But yeah, I love that part. I love everything about this movie.
Yeah. One side note, I'm probably gonna have multiple side notes, but did you see there's a video going on around right now, the lead singer from Florence and the Machines, and it's a video of her reacting to the end scene where they use that song. It's
I haven't seen
so good, because I don't
find
know if she knows that she's being actually filmed during it. It's like, well, obviously like either one of her friends or family or something like that, and they're just in the movie theater just filming her.
That's awesome.
And yeah, and you get to see just a genuine reaction of the singer where they're using it. That being in a band and like that kind of thing, like I can only imagine like how crazy that would feel to submit your music, but you don't know where or how they're going to use it, and to see it in such a powerful way used like at the end of a movie, like just like you said, that is a happy like a happy cry moment type of thing.
Absolutely.
It's you're getting this flood of emotions where it's all positive, but it's also sad because everybody's saying goodbye and you're saying goodbye, and this is the last time you're gonna see everyone, and it's just like
we finally get to understand Groot.
Yeah, that was the other thing. That was the other thing that got officially confirmed. It's not Groot changing his language like he does in the first one when he says "We are Groot." That was actually him changing his language. It's us. We've been with Groot for long enough that at the exact moment there, we were finally able to understand him.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Perfect.
That's pretty great stuff. Yeah.
And
the way that's set up through Gamora's interactions throughout the movie is how that perfectly comes like full circle.
I did like that running joke.
And I also saw a cool interview with James Gunn talking about how like some of these songs are really hard to get, and how like the Beastie Boys doesn't really they'll lend out their songs sometimes, but they won't give you soundtrack rights. but because they're all fans of the Guardians, like he has no trouble getting soundtrack rights to the songs that
That's
he
awesome.
requests. So it's like that's pretty cool. Like you get these freaking legends who are like, no, yeah, we love your movie. Of course, we're gonna let you use the soundtrack.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, just like you said, like we could go on and on. One thing I did actually hear, and then I'm last side note, and then I'll get into kind of my takeaways. Is I heard from like because James Gunn was doing yes or no answers on Twitter the other day, and somebody asked, and they were like, "Are we ever going to see like is there a specific playlist on that Zune that is then given to Rocket at the end of the movie type of thing?" And he said yes, and he said like somebody asked, "Are we ever gonna be able to get what that full list is?" And he said yes. So. How epic is that going to be? Because you looked at that one part, it is by decades, like at the very, very end when Rocket's going through the songs. So like, I'm wondering, what that's going to be, or if it's just going to be like all three soundtracks, basically put together, but split up by their decades. But I would really like to see that full Zune track listing. But anyway, so there was two big things. Like, they're not even the biggest takeaways from this movie. Like anything could be a big takeaway from this movie. That's how many things I want to talk about in this movie. But I limited it to two. The first one goes, I say, in comparison to the No Sleep for Brooklyn fight scene. I thought that was by far the best action sequence from the movie and in many MCU fight sequences in general. But that one was incredible. But I think runner up to that was the scene with Groot and Quill.
Oh yeah,
when they go onto the high evolutionary ship, and everyone keeps saying it's a trap, and he goes, "It's not a trap if you know who you're walking into it. It's a face off."
Yeah.
Little side note: it's funny that at the end they actually rip his face off. Anyway, but that took me by surprise. I did not think that was going to be such a cool action sequence between Peter Quill and Groot, where all the guns are flying, they get everybody. That was awesome. From that part to when they jump out, I thought was an incredible action sequence. But what was really not only that, but what was really kind of cool to think about that kind of led me to think about was there were a lot of parts of this movie where we got to see specific like duos or parts of the team working together that we hadn't really seen before. Like we really haven't seen Peter and Groot work together like that. And it was really cool. Yeah. It was really cool to see them and to trust, like, I mean, they were right there, like together type of thing. But not only that, when we got to see, Drax, Mantis and Nebula working together, we got to see, you know what I mean? Like I really enjoyed seeing the different interactions of different parts of the team. It wasn't just always we have everyone together and, a couple of one-liners every once in a while, like across to other different people. It was really cool to kind of see different pair-ups and different, interactions, because it really did show how lived in, I guess, these characters were. Like you could really feel like their relationships had fully grown type of thing over the course of these three movies type of thing. And I mean, there was plenty of really, funny jokes that got thrown into those kind of interactions, and where like Nebula's saying that Drax is dumb and Mantis agrees with him or agrees with her and then makes Drax forget it. And, like stuff like that, like little things like that. But I just think it was really like I said at the beginning, it was really cool to have had this entire trilogy focused on these characters and to really by the end feel like we really did see their growth, not only in themselves, but in like to everyone in that group. And it was just really cool to see that. The other one was the Marvel's first real F-bomb.
There's a button under the handle. Press that in.
Okay. Now what?
Open the fucking door.
What happened?
I thought, you know what? It's funny when it was bleeped in the trailer, but I think the way he says it is so matter of fact. It is perfect. Like I thought it was a perfect F-bomb. It actually made me laugh out loud in the theater. I didn't have the greatest crowd in my theater. Like it was packed.
I didn't have a great crowd in my theater too.
Yeah.
Like it was all a bunch of old people in the middle, like early in the morning. So I think we were just in there before the kids got out of school, I guess.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, I think because I went to a 5 p.m. day of show, like immediately, like I saw it type of thing. So it wasn't even, I don't think it was even full. Like it was basically full, but I don't think it was completely full. Like front 2 rows weren't. But there were definitely like that part, like were definitely the most crowd participation, I guess. And I was one of the people that kind of led that chuckle. So I was like, because it was just so perfectly matter of fact. Like that scene might be one of my favorite scenes, and that is crazy to say because the entire movie has like my favorite scenes in it, type of thing. So yeah, I there's so many things I could talk about. There's so many things that are worth highlighting in this. We almost could do a part 2 of this after we rewatch it and kind of go over, how many cool things that hit harder in the earlier movies. Now that we got the resolution in the end of the trilogy type of thing, like the scene, it's been pointed out multiple times on TikTok and Instagram and stuff like that. The scene that hits way harder, like the most obvious scene, is where Rocket is they're on Nowhere in the first movie, and it's before Ronan shows up. And it's where Rocket is yelling because
when he's drunk and yelling at him.
Yeah, and he's yelling at everybody. He goes, "I didn't ask to be ripped apart and sewn back together over and over." That scene hits way harder, and I think that it speaks volumes on how like great this film is to make past movies of this franchise that much better and have that much more context to them. Like it really solidifies this as a trilogy. Not just 3 movies in a row with these same characters. It really does enhance the viewing of the other 2 movies because of some of the stuff that's in this third one. And I think that's really cool when that can happen. It doesn't happen that often. I mean, I think, the original Star Wars trilogy, maybe the original Indiana Jones trilogy, like there are a lot of trilogies out there, but I think there are only certain amount of trilogies where you get to the end of the trilogy and some of that stuff enhances some of the stuff in the earlier movies.
Yeah. I mean, context at the end of the day is always going to, when it's added to something that you love, is always going to make something else better, right? I think it's like the first thing I think of is Rogue One to Empire, A New Hope. Like you watch that now and then you watch A New Hope afterwards, you see that movie in a whole different light. So I think, and the way that this trilogy is able kind of to go back on arcs and add more content, especially Rock. I think Rocket's the biggest thing here because Rocket's someone that you could already feel that pain in that first movie in that scene, but when you see more that's behind it, it doesn't makes it hit just a little bit harder because you've actually seen firsthand what he went through. So and of course I was thinking back when we get the mugshots and you see like the associates and it said Lila.
Yep.
So Lila was always mentioned. Now we finally got to see what happened to Lila. So getting all that. And I was a little like, I felt like baited with the way that we were kind of like led to believe someone was going to die in this game or in this movie. But the more I look back on the whole, the Rocket thing, when he's kind of like seeing the light and then they kind of get stopped, it works well because of what you see him propel to at the end of the movie, right? He becomes the leader again. So he gets that moment where he's always had like this like little fight between him and Quill for leadership, but now he just like relinquishes the leadership to him, which I think is like kind of almost makes it a little bit better in my opinion.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think I understand what you're saying because we even spoke about this as soon as you got out of the movie, and we were kind of talking about this. I would have been okay at certain points if Rocket had died, only because I'd kind of gone into the movie prepping myself of this might be the last for a couple of these people. Not only that, but so I there were a couple points in the movie where like, oh, that might happen. Like it was even at towards the end when Rocket goes back and starts rescuing all of the baby raccoons and all of the other animals right before the High Evolutionary showed up. I was like, he might just show up and stab Rocket in the back type of thing. Like I could see that happening type of thing and him going right then. But I'm okay with everyone having a finished arc type of thing. Because I think it's really all based on sacrifice. They all, at certain points, have sacrificed for the team or for another person or something like that. You know what I mean? And even the people that did pass away in the other movies, like the original Groot, like Yondu type of thing, they did that, and it was received very well because they did it and it was a very emotional scene and it was for the good of the group and for the characters that they were sacrificing themselves for. So to not have anybody pass away, like completely pass away, I guess, but to see everyone willing to sacrifice for their team, I think really it gave everybody kind of a very good send off because they all, you can tell that they all truly care about each other, but they need to go on their own type of thing for a while. So I think that was really cool. You want to get to some predictions?
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. All right. I'm going to kick off predictions. I'm going to kick it off with the last thing that we saw when we were in the theaters, which was the post-credit scene. We had a mid-credit scene and we had a post-credit scene. We were already touching on the mid-credit scene, which is Rocket leading the new version of the Guardians. But the post-credit scene, very short. I think it was very dry humor, and I liked that. I felt like I was almost in an episode of like Parks and Rec or something like that, like kind of level of thing. And I get it. It doesn't in the long run. It's not super significant, but I thought like for me, I was like, okay, that's okay. And we get the text after the scene. Basically, so the scene is basically we have Peter Quill eating breakfast with his grandfather. His grandfather's asking if he can go and mow their neighbor's yard. To which Peter goes, doesn't their 45-year-old son live there who's perfectly able-bodied to mow their lawn? Like, wouldn't it be weird him just sitting there watching me mow the lawn? He's like, this guy's gone to space. He's seen some shit. He's killed countless aliens. He saved the world. Like, you know what I mean? He's done all this stuff. And he goes, yeah, I'm going to have to go over there and mow this guy's lawn. And he's going to watch me. But after that finishes, we get the text, the legendary Star-Lord will return. And so there's so many like theories that I've seen based off of this. And that got me excited only because there are so many different routes that could happen from this. Now, the simplest I think is, Peter's on Earth. We could see him, team up with Avengers if there's another threat that comes to Earth type of thing. Like, you know what I mean? Like he's now on Earth. He's easy to contact. There are plenty of people that know who he is from the Avengers team that are on Earth. So boom, we could even have, we could even have Doctor Strange open a portal and just walk in type of thing at some point to recruit him back for Avengers, King Dynasty, Secret Wars, whatever. That's the first one. The second one is there's a comic line, where he's basically just adventuring solo. There's a solo line, and it's the legendary Star-Lord comic line. And I know you know way more about the comic lines and comic arcs than I do, but I think that would be kind of cool, whether we did it as a series, like a limited run series, or if we did it as a movie where we kind of had, something threatens Quill. Like, I don't know if it's maybe, Mantis is in danger, so he's got to go rescue. You know what I mean? Like something that throws him, that kind of thrusts him back into action, and we kind of almost get like, I've got to figure this out type of thing, and I don't have time to get anybody else back together, or I can't reach the Guardians, I can't do this type of thing. We could have some sort of, limited adventure with Peter Quill. I think that would be interesting also. Also, we know we're getting the introduction of mutants relatively soon. I don't know what phase it's actually going to come in, but we know that's coming about. There's also another comic arc and comic line where we have Peter Quill dating a mutant, Kitty Pryde. So that could be a thing where, like, we finally get the mutants, we finally get introduced to Kitty Pryde, and somehow they cross paths, or we find out that Peter Quill has a girlfriend and it just happens to be Kitty Pryde. Like, there's many ways we can get into that. The last one I was thinking of, that is, I get it. It's way out there. And I'm going to let you go right after this one because I know how crazy it sounds. But we have got 100% confirmation that there is at least one person out there, and I believe they said at least one Avenger out there that still remembers Peter Parker as Spider-Man type of thing. They didn't explain how we know that. They didn't explain or how they know that. They didn't explain why they know that and how the spell didn't work on them. There's no explanation to that. We just know that there is one person / Avenger out there. And I was thinking about that. I was like, how interesting would that be if we get Peter Quill remembering who Peter Parker is for whatever reason, type of thing. I don't know how they would, intersect, whether it would be, in the lead up to King Dynasty and Secret Wars type of thing, because we know that Tom Holland's Spider-Man is going to be in that. But I just think it would be really interesting if, because of being in space, maybe B, any residual celestial stuff that Peter Quill may have still had at that point. Like, you never know. But I just think that would be really interesting if he was the one who kind of remembered, because I mean, they did have a pretty big interaction in Infinity War. I mean, he was basically holding a gun to Tom Holland's Spider-Man's head. So they remember each other. They went through some shit together. But I just think that would be really cool if down the line, that is the person that Peter Parker can kind of bring into the fold of, oh, you remember that I'm Spider, like you remember who I am. Type of thing. Like, I think that would be really cool if we, if kind of, if Peter Parker's Spider-Man is trying to kind of get the Avengers back together for like the Secret Wars threat or for the King Dynasty Avengers threat type of thing. And Star-Lord has to be the one to back him up and say, like, this is his credentials. He did help save the world with all of us type of thing. You might not remember who he is, but this is who he is. I think that would be really cool. I go on for forever. Rico, what were some of your predictions? I guess moving forward from this movie.
Yeah, I think the legendary Star-Lord definitely feels like a reference to the comic book line, where he does kind of go off on his own and learns a little bit more about his comic book father, who's his name is Jason from Spartax. But I don't think they're gonna really go that route with that character anymore. I don't think they can. But you could still do this thing where, like, his grandpa's old. It doesn't seem like he's got that much time left. And eventually,
97, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So Star-Lord's going to be here hanging out with them for like a year or two at best. And then what's he going to do later? He's going to get bored on Earth. He's already bored on Earth. You can see him just eating cereal and he has to mow people's lawns. Like, he's not made for this kind of life anymore. That's what happens when you're raised by Ravagers, I guess. But yeah, but also I think it's also just in the business sense, it's also a way to be like, well, Chris Pratt can come back for the Avengers movies because everybody's going to be in that freaking movie. And you got to find someone. And I think that's going to be the way, like, it could possibly, like, the first time we see him back is when his grandpa dies, and then we kind of see him get thrust back into that lifestyle again. So I definitely see that being like the route you can go to bring him back if they want to bring back Chris Pratt in that movie, which I imagine they do. But yeah, the first credit scene, we get to see the new iteration of the Guardians of the Galaxy. Of course, we have Rocket, we have Kraglin, we have Alpha Groot or King Groot. I'm not exactly sure which version of Groot he's supposed to be, but he's the size of a freaking kaiju now, which is pretty awesome. We have Cosmo and we have Adam Warlock, who's also in a nice little in his own little Guardians outfit, which I think is pretty cool. And then we have one new character who goes by the name of Phyla. And for comic fans, there is a character named Phyla Vell, who was the daughter of Marvel, who we've seen in Captain Marvel already, but I assume no relation. So they kind of left off the Vell there, like, hey, Phyla, what do you think? And of course, like, being one of the kids that, like, I guess Drax's adopted children. This is a good way to kind of start incorporating other members of the comic book Guardians into the team going forward. So Phyla in the comics, she becomes Captain Marvel at one point, but she also becomes a character named Quasar. I think that seems like more like the power set they're going with is the Quasar route with her. But also she has relation to a character named Moondragon, who is also kind of like a daughter-ish of Drax. That her father's soul gets put into Drax's body, which I think is pretty interesting. But she's a pretty cool character. If you play the video game, I think she's mentioned in the video game when you go to like the jail and you see all the records of all the different characters. She's definitely mentioned in there. But it's also a way if you wanted to be like, hey, well, Drax got all these kids, maybe Moondragon is one of those kids along in there as well. Not only just Phyla Vell, but also Moondragon. So I would really like to see if, like, we're getting like this big kids lineup of Avengers, basically. Like the list just keeps growing and growing. And so I was watching a video where it seemed like, what if all the, adult Avengers, get taken off to the battle world for Secret Wars, and who's going to be left to defend Earth while they're gone? Bunch of kid Avengers, right? You got the young Avengers being set up right there, I feel like. And the list just keeps growing. You got, Tommy and Billy, you got a kid Loki somewhere out there. You got Axel and Love who are two other kids from the Asgardian realm, and now we got some of Drax's kids. We got Phyla-Vell, and we got possibly Moondragon if they want to bring her along later on. But the more this list grows, the more of a powerful looking team you have there, and I think the Young Avengers is something we're going to see a lot sooner than we think.
I am absolutely for it. I mean, we've been talking about Young Avengers, I feel like, for at least a year at this point, because I mean, we've seen Kate Bishop, we've seen Yelena, we've seen a lot of people that could add, Cassie Lang, a lot of people that could add to this team for the Young Avengers. So I think that would be awesome. One thing I was just thinking of, and I there's been obviously no confirmation, and I really feel like if it was going to happen, then it would still be in association with James Gunn, only because I feel like he would have to have some sort of hand in it. But I was just thinking about this. How cool would it be to have a like Disney Plus series with like the new adventures of the Guardians type of thing? And so it's like we get kind of more of an introduction to that newer team, and we kind of get to see that, but it's not a movie. So it's not like big threats. It's more like, monster of the week kind of threats type of thing. But we're just getting introduced to more of the characters and that world and kind of what their new missions are with Rocket as the leader and stuff like that. Obviously, like I said, I think it's below 1% we get that kind of thing, only because I really think it would have to be in association with James Gunn, because he really, just like, you've said, and I obviously agree with, I think James Gunn knows these characters better than anybody else, the Guardians in general. So if it was going to involve, have a major part with Rocket in there, I think James Gunn would have to have some sort of consultation to the series type of thing. But I just think, just while you were explaining that, I think it would be really cool if we had something like that. And I think a series would kind of be a better outlet for that instead of like a movie.
I think the best route you could do with characters like that, especially because most of them are CG, or or a talking dog. But an anime, like if we did an animated series that's not just like not just like What If, but something that's taking place in another universe, but you actually have like an in canon animated series that covers the adventures between the adventures, essentially, for certain teams like the Guardians, like this. I think that's definitely something you can do, especially you have like Clone Wars style animation, but in the MCU, kind of add more of a depth to it. I think you can definitely start doing that with these like space characters and kind of these more out there characters that are kind of on their own pocket, for sure.
Yeah, I completely agree. And just like we always say, that's what we think. Let us know in the comments below. What did you think of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3? Are you okay with saying goodbye to most of these characters? I can't believe how crazy this 9 to 10 year run has been. It was such a crazy out of nowhere group of people. Like I remember walking into the theater going, I don't know these characters at all. Hopefully it's good. And then just coming out, just blown away. And I feel like it's just been an awesome ride. I can't wait to kind of get the third one out and just watch it as a straight through trilogy type of thing. I think in general, this may have been may be my favorite MCU trilogy now. I know it's bold to say that because there's a lot of, the Captain America trilogy is really good. Iron Man,
forth on those two.
Yeah. Iron Man trilogy, not so great. I love the first Iron Man. But I think this might be my favorite MCU trilogy. Really, really saying that now. But anyway, let us know in the comments below. What did you think? What is your favorite MCU trilogy moving forward now that we've got the conclusion of the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy? And as always, don't forget, like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to hear about all of our audio and video podcast releases. Bye, everybody!
Poppin' Off presents That Recap Show.